CNN.com gets almost as much traffic as all the conservative outlets that they checked in their analysis. That counts Fox, that counts absolutely everybody else. CNN, everybody else. Okay? That we know what's happening with that. You can look, that's Google. I will give Facebook credit because they when they deplatformed, at least they also got rid of Farrakhan. I don't think we should be deplatforming people. I think that is a general thing. In reading Nat Hentoff and believing in free speech, I remember when the ACLU would actually defend free speech as opposed to attacking it. That's where we've got to be. I think the previous panelists were very correct on that. But we've also got to get more involved in tech. We've talked about a billion things here. Almost no organizations in the conservative movement have tech policy people. Got to wake up to that. You got to find the money. The donors got to find the money. We've got to get more involved in tech policy because tech policy is the future and it's also the present. We're in a dangerous place where the people who should be our number one allies for free speech, and that's the press, are in fact our number one enemies. The press is actively out there trying to deplatform people instead of trying to defend free speech people. You've got CNN. CNN took down Alex Jones. It wasn't Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. It was CNN harassing them about it. That's where we are right now. So media bias, which we've always dealt with, has moved into a realm now where not one of you know how you're being treated online because it's different for each one of us. The algorithms, it may decide that you're being screwed over, you may not. I do want to give credit, since I spend my life bashing the press, I want to give credit to the media people who are here today. Because the tech media and the regular media don't think this is an issue. They've been told, and they believe it, generally speaking, that we're not being discriminated against online. So anybody who's a journalist who's here today is actually treating us seriously. And
that's right.
That's to their credit, because this is the idea that we could have elections being decided ultimately by social media companies who just choose, we don't agree with your positions. We don't like your position on guns or pro-life or faith. So we're going to remove those posts and effectively deplatform politicians. That's where we are right now. So again, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Seferati.
My name is Todd Seferati. Back in 2009, I was not in the political arena. I was not in the media arena. I was a dad from Gilbert, Arizona. And I decided, after Obamacare was shoved down the throat of the American people, I became the largest national Tea Party organization called the TeaParty.net. We grew through this amazing platform called Facebook to just under 10 million followers, active, engaged followers.
Wow.
Do you all wonder where the Tea Party has gone? Do we hear the Tea Party anymore?
No.
Well, in 2015, I started the Tea Party News Network, which became a very engaged media organization. We were active here in Washington, D.C. Our 10 million followers were extremely active in our content through the Facebook platform. Literally overnight, our traffic averaged 2.5 million views per day. And for people that know analytics, in Google Analytics, our live traffic tended to be between 10 and 20,000 active users on our site at any given time. I woke up one morning, on a Sunday morning, and I'll never forget, and my traffic went from that 10 to 20,000 to 900 overnight. And as we've talked about, that's how we ran our company, both the nonprofit side, which was the TeaParty.net, and the for-profit side, which was Tea Party News Network. Well, obviously, we were dismayed, and we thought we'd been hacked. We've always been a target. We know that. We accept that. But we hired expensive hack technicians, and the bottom line is Facebook. We became the first casualty in the Facebook war against the American people. And a lot of my associates in the industry kind of laughed at me and thought, oh gosh, they're not attacking us. A lot of news organizations have said, no, we're fine, and they were fine. I think because we have the Tea Party brand, that we were the initial casualty. So, life goes on. I'm a Tea Party guy, I'm a fighter. I'm not gonna sit and whine. It happened. As I said before, now I've moved into the world of being an author. I'm the author of a book, Big Tech Tyrants, and co-founder of FeedMe. So I'm trying to use the free market to combat companies that are worth 100, 200, 300 billion dollars.
900.
This is where we are. It goes up every day. As I said before, though, these companies, I respect the founders immensely. This is what free market capitalism in the greatest country ever in the world can achieve in their garages, basically. Most of these big tech companies were an idea by very smart people, and I respect that immensely. But I compare it to like a marriage. So the marriage, when you go into a marriage, you have a contract with your spouse. I bring my intimacy and my assets to you, and we trust each other, and we're giving, and we're developing a contract. Well, our contract with big tech was, I'm going to give you all my personal data, and I'm going to let you become a multi-billion-dollar company, but in return, and I'm going to give you content, because you're not providing any content. We are.
Exactly.
And how do they monetize? They monetize off our data and our content. So that marriage was fantastic. Just like you entered a marriage, you thought, wow, this is a great spouse. And then in the marriage, one of the spouses decides to break that contract and start cheating on you. And let's choose the husband in this case and say, well, I'm going to have 4 mistresses, but you brought all your assets, all your wealth to this marriage, but I don't care now because we're into this marriage and I'm breaking the contract. So what companies like Facebook has done, even though it's an amazing, world-changing thing, and again, that I will always respect, they've changed the rules. And now they're not allowing us to proceed with the original contract, which is I give you my data and you let it go to people that want your content. So again, with great power comes great responsibility. And a lot of the panelists have been talking about, well, what do you do? Well, I agree with Mr. Kane. If we get into regulation and we get bureaucrats, we know what the deep state does to conservatives and conservative organizations. But there is a law that these big tech companies are hiding under. Those of you familiar with the Section 230 Communications and Decency Act, which means they act as a communication platform. So they hide behind that, which means they can't be sued as a publisher can for their content. So if a publisher puts some libelous or defamatory content on, they can be sued. These platforms are no different. Let's compare them to the phone company in 1964.
Well, Mr. Sefrati, we want to get through all of the panelists. We're going to get into these questions, and Section 230 is absolutely one of the questions.
All right, I'll finish this and I'll move on, but this is just really important, and I apologize. There's just so much to go over. They built this into, if the phone company in 1964 built their infrastructure and said 2 people on their phone system were talking about, let's say, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement. And that phone company said, you know what, I don't really like what you're saying, so I'm going to cut off your phone line. Well, that's no different to what big tech is doing now.
That's true.
Mr. Heckman.
Thank you, Aaron. My name is Bob Heckman, and I'm a political consultant. I've served on 9 presidential campaigns over the years. One of the things I want to talk about briefly is how much social media has changed presidential campaigns. But I want to pick up on something that Mr. Kane said before, and that this problem is real.
That's right.
Last night when I was putting together some notes for this, I showed my wife the agenda for this program, and I showed her this logo. I said, that's kind of a neat looking logo. And she looked at Facebook and Netflix, Amazon, and Google, She said to me, "You do realize, don't you, that it's their world and we're all just living in it." These guys have a tremendous amount of power, and as you said, Mr. Kane, I'm not sure that they really care that we're sitting here and belly aching. And until we operationalize and actionalize all this stuff, they're not going to care. Social media is fairly new in presidential campaigns. It wasn't until the 2008 presidential campaign that you had the use of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. As a matter of fact, the first tweet by a presidential candidate was actually a tweet by Barack Obama in October of 2007. That was the first time anybody had ever used Twitter in a presidential campaign. But by 2016, now you're going 8 years forward, social media actually dominated presidential campaigns. And as a matter of fact, the Wall Street Journal at one point said traditional media and the parties have lost their dominance to the digital revolution. There was something that happened during that campaign that a lot of us may have noticed, some of us may have noticed. In August of 2015, there was a debate among Republican presidential candidates, and Jeb Bush was asked a question about illegal immigration. And Jeb Bush, who was the leading candidate atop all the polls at the time, said, quote, "Yeah, they broke the law, but it's not a felony. It's actually an act of love," quote unquote. I don't know how many people remember that quote, but the Trump campaign took that piece of video and they drove that through every means of social media, so that by the next day that was the biggest story in the country and in front of every Republican and every conservative in the country. So ask yourself the question of what might have happened if you had one of these big giants who had the ability to actually suppress that at the time and say, no, we don't like that kind of speech. Mr. Kane gave us a great case study, and I'm going to give you another. And I'll be real quick about it, Aaron, but I serve as a senior consultant to a group called the Susan B. Anthony List.
Yeah.
And some of you may have heard of SBA List. They are the largest pro-life group in the country right now. They're a $16 million a year operation. They have a national network of more than 700,000 Americans. Their online ads in campaigns and in issue advocacy have been censored by Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube on 21 separate instances in the last 2 years. 21 different times they have been censored by them. Here's an example. They ran a Twitter ad saying, tell your congressman, fill in the name of your congressman, tell Congressman so-and-so, pass a health care bill to defund Planned Parenthood and end taxpayer funding of abortion. Twitter refused to run that ad, said it violated their standards.
Recently, Mr. Hackman?
This is 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
At the same exact time, Planned Parenthood was running an ad that said, tweet your congressman to say you stand with Planned Parenthood to protect access to health care. That ad was okay, but somehow the pro-life ad was not. Let me give you another example. Susan B. Anthony List ran again on Twitter an ad featuring a picture of somebody who had said something very profound. The woman said, quote, abortion is profoundly anti-woman. That ad was suppressed. The person who said that was Mother Teresa. The picture and the ad were suppressed.
She's offensive.
Exactly.
She committed hate crimes.
Why is this stuff? I could give you half a dozen more examples from them, but I won't. But why is this important? Well, number one, if you are one of these advocacy groups, you have to waste staff time, resources, legal help, etc., fighting for reinstatement. In every one of those 21 instances, the ads eventually got reinstated. But here's the second reason
The Mother
why
Teresa ad was reinstated?
it was reinstated. They were all
Nice.
reinstated, Aaron.
Nice.
But here's the second reason why this is important. Anybody who's been in a campaign knows that when you lose a few hours or a half a day or whatever, you can lose the entire news cycle. It can have a dramatic impact on your ability to move either an issue that you're trying to move or a candidacy that you're trying to move. And the third reason it's important is because it's blatantly unfair when similar ads from competing causes are allowed, but yours are not. I want to quickly address what I call the myth of blaming algorithms. Algorithms are written by people. They're written by people, and if they were completely fair and just a mathematical equation, then you would not have something like a pro-life ad being banned, but a pro-choice ad being allowed.
Right.
Facebook, Twitter, others who use algorithms have already admitted mistakes over and over. For example, we had, through Susan B. Anthony list, an ad supporting Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee when she was running for the Senate. They disapproved of the ad as low quality, quote unquote. Now, how does an algorithm know that an ad is low quality? It was reinstated the same day by Facebook. They sent us this message: this ad does not violate Facebook's policies and should never have been disapproved. Well, if the algorithms work, then how is it possible that the algorithm could have disapproved the ad and then later the ad be okay? They constantly say that they're taking steps to address such problems. In our case with Susan B. Anthony list, the Twitter problems began in 2016, Facebook in 2018, Google ads was censored in 2018, YouTube videos were censored in 2016, and all of that continues. Over and over again, there's proof that this is arbitrary enforcement of unstated and unfair policies. Bottom line, big tech censorship presents a major threat to free speech, to the free exchange of ideas, the conduct of open elections. And let me add one bottom